answer to problems. In 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 9 to 11, Elijah was a prophet for 50 years or more. He brought rain from heaven. He stopped the rains. Ravens fed him at the brook of Cherith. He increased the oil of a widow, brought fire from heaven. And after all these great miracles, when Queen Jezebel threatened to kill him, Elijah is hiding in a cave, filled with fear, in loneliness, in sorrow, in discouragement and in defeat. A great prophet is now in sorrow. A cave represents fear, darkness, defeat, loneliness, secret place, rejection, and no one wants to visit a cave. In such a place, our God visits Elijah. God did not visit Elijah when he was doing big miracles, when he was on top of the mountain. But God visited Elijah when he was in a cave, in a broken state, because our God is a God who visits you in the most difficult times of your life. Many of us are sitting in cave-like situations, hiding in fear, defeat, discouragement, in darkness. Maybe some of you are in habits and sins, in shame, a place of rejection or loneliness. I've come to tell you that there is a God who visits you in the cave of your life, and his name is Jesus. Number 2, if you read verse number 9, God comes and asks Elijah, "What doest thou here? You are a chosen vessel." Many a time God asks us, "What are you doing here?" And Elijah says in verse number 10, "I've been very jealous for God, but children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down the altars, slain the prophets, now trying to kill me too." He's giving many reasons to God. He is in a cave of self-pity. Many of us are in the similar situation. We blame everyone. My wife is bad, my father is bad, my brother is bad. Everyone are bad. My sister is bad. But God says, instead of sitting in the cave of self-pity, first come out of the cave. Come out of the cave. Because the answer to your problem is not inside the cave. The answer to the problem is in my presence. God is standing outside the cave and telling Elijah, "I know you're a good man. I know you're having a lot of self-pity. All are bad except you. First come out of the cave." Today God is telling us to leave our cave of grief and self-pity, of sin, of lust, of worldly pleasures and desires, and come into his presence, because the answer to your problem is not in your cave, but it is in the presence of God. For many days I was in the cave of loneliness, self-pity, blaming everyone, in sorrow, in discouragement like Elijah. But God visited me and told me to come into his presence. And that's how God gave me this message. Many people do not receive an answer. Though they call Jesus, 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 they don't get an answer because they're not willing to leave their cave. The Lord says, how much ever you sit in the cave and call my name, no use. You need to come out of your cave, because your answer is not in the cave, but your answer is in my presence. Today, a decision we need to take is, Lord, I know that you're the only one who has visited me in the cave of my life, but I will take a step and come out of my cave, out of my bad ways, my old ways, my self-pity, my sorrow, and I will come into your presence. Thirdly, in verse number 11, second part, it says, now Elijah comes into the presence of God, and there, behold, a great strong wind. After the wind was an earthquake, and after the earthquake, came a fire. But there was no answer in that. After the fire, there was a still, soft voice that Elijah heard. Whenever you decide to come into God's presence, I tell you, there will be strong winds. There will be earthquakes. Wife will be throwing plates. Husbands will be staring at you. Children will be running away. Enemies will become your neighbors. And friends will become enemies. There will be fiery trials of sickness, loss of job. And many people do not receive their answer because when they see such strong winds and earthquakes and trials, they leave the presence of God. But I want to tell you, Elijah saw the earthquake. He saw the strong winds. He saw the fire. But he says, my life, my desire is only you, O Lord. That's when he heard the still, soft voice of God. If you want an answer to your problem, in spite of strong winds, in spite of earthquakes, in spite of troubles and chaos, in spite of sickness and of health or riches going away, stay in God's presence and say, my desire is to sit in your presence all the days of my life, O God. And then you will hear the still soft voice of God giving you the answer to your problem. After Elijah heard this still soft voice, he never again went back to the cave. He never again had self-pity. He was no more in sorrow. He was no more in fear. And let me tell you, Queen Jezebel, who wanted to kill him, could not kill him. In fact, death could not touch him, because Elijah was one of the three who were taken up to heaven, and his body did not see decay, because he stayed in the presence of God. Through earthquake, through strong winds, through fiery trials, through destruction, he held on to the presence of God. Today we need to take a decision and tell the Lord, Lord, whatever happens, strong winds, earthquake, fiery trials, life or death, I will stay in your presence, because my desire is to be in your presence all the days of my life. And in his presence, when you come into the presence of God, there could be strong winds, there could be earthquake, there could be fiery trials, but stay on like Elijah. In his presence, you will hear the still, soft voice. We need to stay in his presence to hear his voice and get an answer to your problems. God bless you.